And I don't take it lightly in terms of expense. $1 million, $1.2 million, or whatever the number is a lot of money. It's going to take sacrifice. We have to commit. But what better to commit to than the growth of your church?
This will be a sacrifice for everyone involved. And we make sacrifices every day to accomplish God's goals, whether we know it or not. So I would ask that you prayerfully consider growing God's grace so that we may spread the message that God loves us.
We have been taught that the value of a gift is not determined by the amount, but by our attitude in giving it. We actually give most of the time out of our abundance, not out of sacrifice. Samuel 24, verse 24 says, "Never give to the Lord anything which cost us nothing." Sacrifice, to be real, must cost. It must hurt. It must empty us of ourselves. Again, individual prayers for God's guidance will be critical in accomplishing our goal.
I think about how in the biblical times of Nehemiah and the exiles came back to Jerusalem and there wasn't a wall around the city to keep it safe. How Nehemiah said, let's build it in record time so that people will know that God is with us and God is doing that. And in this time in our lives, when we are all being asked to sacrifice for so many things, we don't want to give up the one thing that keeps us all together, and that is the Spirit of God.
The Psalm 16:6 says, "The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage." And truly, I have a goodly heritage from Williamsburg Presbyterian Church. My grandparents were members of this congregation, and my mother was raised in Williamsburg Presbyterian Church. When I visited my grandparents as a child, I always came to church with them. In 1961, when we came to Kingstree, we became members of Williamsburg Presbyterian Church. And we have been ministered to by this congregation, as well as giving the privilege of serving in this congregation over these years. And it is our prayer that Williamsburg Church and its ministry will continue to grow as God sees fit and as His will is done.
I believe we, the members of the Williamsburg Presbyterian Church, are in a unique position to take advantage of low interest rates, low construction costs, and no debt to not only build a nice building to complement our existing sanctuary, but also to build a building that will be both a family life and an outreach center.
I just think not going forward sends the wrong message. If we don't do this, what does that say to the congregation? What does that say to our growing church faith? That we're just status quo, we're willing to just accept where we are? I don't think that's a good day.
The mission statement of our church says that we are to be a caring, nurturing, growing, giving body of faith. For over 275 years, the members of this church have been living in the midst of that mission. And now at this pivotal point, as we continue to try to grow God's grace, we are looking at new ways to fulfill that mission. And the officers and men and women of this church have decided that one way to do that is to expand with bigger dreams, to grow God's grace through the addition of this facility. In the old marriage service, it says that marriage is not to be entered into lightly, but with fear and trepidation, much like we have entered into this project. We have come to that point where we believe what the prophet Jeremiah says, where it says, I have plans for you, not of harm, but great plans for a future filled with hope. So we ask now that you prayerfully consider how you can be part of the plan God has for us, as together we grow God's grace.
In the coming months, we will all share in communication and information as we embark on a new phase in the life of Williamsburg Presbyterian Church. The 21st century has blessed us with an abundance of children who are learning and living the Word of the Lord, with varied groups who meet on a regular basis to further glorify His kingdom, and several successful outreach programs. Our existing facilities simply are not adequate for the many needs of our growing body of faith. And so, as we plan for our future, the church will begin a capital campaign entitled Growing God's Grace. Through this effort, we will be able to grow our facilities, to serve a growing body of faith, to further spiritual growth. God is calling us to build a family life center adjacent to our church. This multi-purpose building will serve as a gathering place for existing groups and functions, but will provide opportunities to create and serve new groups, functions, and community outreach programs. The Family Life Center would include a large space conducive to gatherings and functions with many options for table and chair layouts. This room could seat up to 160 people around tables for covered dish lunches, Wednesday night happenings, Blessed Angela meals, children's programs, King Street Community Youth, and wedding receptions, just to name a few. The center would house a commercial kitchen capable of providing meals for large groups, and we could also move the church staff offices from its current multi-floor layout to a more centralized, functional, and convenient environment. The vision statement for our church states, Williamsburg Presbyterian Church is focused on the spiritual needs of our congregation and our community through study, worship, and activity for all ages. This Family Life Center will help us attain this goal, but it does not come without personal sacrifice. Sunday, November 14th, 2010 is Commitment Sunday. Everyone will have an opportunity to make a 3-year pledge to accomplish this project. But remember, it's not about a building. It is about tools to accomplish the work of the Lord. It's not about bricks and mortar, but it's about people and God's calling for us to provide for the future of His people, just as those before us provided for us.